guys, and welcome back to Eggs the Podcast. Today we've got something special lined up. I've got an interview with a gentleman named Bob Burg. Bob is co-author of a book called The Go-Giver, which is a wildly successful business title. Lots of books sold, top of every bestseller list. Basically, it discusses these different laws that people can apply to their business lives and maybe even their personal lives, and find success. We only had a brief window with him. We had about 30 minutes time with him, but he shared with me a little video that I'm going to play for you here in just a second that talks about the Go-Giver and the philosophy behind the book, and sort of describes a little bit the first chapter of the book. After, I will lead into my interview with Bob, and we'll wrap up right after that. So thanks so much for tuning in. I think you're really going to get a lot of value out of this little rapid fire interview with our special guest, Bob Burg.
Meet Joe, an ambitious young man who yearns for success. Sound familiar? Maybe you know someone like Joe. He's aggressive, relatively successful, and determined to reach the top. A real go-getter. But something is missing. Something that has caused him to be not nearly as financially successful and internally fulfilled as he knows he could be. One day, Joe is fortunate to be introduced to a man named Pindar, known by some of the most highly successful people in the world simply as the chairman. Over the next week, Joe meets some of Pindar's former protégés who are extremely financially and personally successful. With Joe, they share the 5 laws of stratospheric success. They explain to Joe that if used together, these somewhat counterintuitive 5 laws will lead him to huge success, as it did for them. It only makes sense because these are the same laws people have used in order to be successful in any market-based economy. The law of value. Your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. The law of compensation. Your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. The law of influence. Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. The law of authenticity. The most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. The law of receptivity. The key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. But like any ambitious young man, Joe first challenges these laws before applying them. The law of value, he thinks. This sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy. That sounds reasonable. After all, how does one give more in value than they take in payment and still make a profit? How is value measured? Joe learns that while price is a set dollar figure and finite, value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing to the end user or beholder. So, in other words, what is it about this product or service that brings so much value that a person will willingly exchange their money for it and be ecstatic about it? For example, if Joe hired an accountant to do his tax returns and she charges him $1,000 for her fee or price, when she saves him $5,000 in taxes, hours of work, and provides peace of mind and security that it was done correctly, she gives Joe value far beyond the $1,000. She gives Joe more in value than she took in payment. Joe feels terrific about it, and the accountant makes a very healthy profit. Joe learns quickly the kind of relationship he wants to have with anyone with whom he does business. He discovers how to shift from getting to giving, constantly and consistently providing value to others. This new focus allows Joe to experience a fulfilling way to live while profiting financially as well. Moving from an I or me focus to an other focus is one of the most profitable things a person, especially ambitious Joe, can ever do. Here's the thing. Money is an echo of value. It's the thunder to value's lightning. In other words, value comes first, and the money is simply the natural and direct result of the value provided. The law of value proves to be a good start for Joe, but it's only a start. As important as it is, it represents only his potential income. But tying together the other 4 laws with the first creates the real transformation for Joe. Things improve rapidly. Making money appears effortless, and the returns excitingly unexpected. These laws can do the same for you, just as they did for Joe and for so many of today's hugely successful leaders, entrepreneurs, and salespeople. Join Joe, along with his mentors, Pindar, Ernesto, Nicole, Sam, Deborah, Rachel, and of course, Gus. And be delighted by this quick, easy-to-read story about a powerful business idea. Actually, a powerful life idea. Enter your name below to receive the first chapter of The Go-Giver.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Eggs, the podcast. Today's special guest is Bob Burg, co-author of The Go-Giver. How are you, Bob? Welcome to the show.
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me. Great to reconnect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick little premise for everybody who wants to know how this whole thing came together. In 2019, after 25 years of using the phrase or explaining, and for people who listen to the show, they've heard me say it a million times, this notion that the people do business with folks that they know, like, and trust. And I've been using that phrase since I was a young man. I was taught it by a radio executive 1,000 years ago when I was trying to run a women's fast pitch softball tournament, and I was trying to win sponsors. That was one of the things he taught me. And I was about 19 at the time. And so it's been a really impactful phrase for me all my life. And in 2019, I did a podcast interview with a guy named Mike Saunders, who pointed out to me that Bob was the source of that. Now, granted, other people have said it as well, but Bob's book made it really famous. And the iteration of it I used came from Bob. So I reached out in 2019. He was kind enough to humor me with a little bit of a response. We had a little back and forth. I circled back in 23 and touched base with him again. And then finally, here we are. All the moons have aligned, and here we are. So thanks so much again. So anyway, let's just kind of get into it a little bit. There's a lot of interviews. You obviously do a lot of press, and you do a lot of these interviews. So we don't have to necessarily go into the 5 steps or any of these different things. Like, we can just kind of get into the conversation. But maybe it would help for you to introduce yourself a little bit and just talk about kind of the Go-Giver philosophy more generally.
Yeah, well, the Go-Giver philosophy itself simply says that shifting your focus, which really is where it all begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it is the most financially profitable way as well. And not for any kind of way out there, woo-woo, magical, mystical type of reasons. It actually makes very, very logical sense in that when you're that person who can take your focus off of yourself and place it on serving others, discovering their needs, their wants, their desires, making it not about you, but about helping them overcome their challenges, their problems. When you make it not about you, but rather about moving them closer to happiness, people feel good about you. Really, they feel great about you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you when that's appropriate. They want to tell others about you. They want to be your personal walking ambassador. So that's really the essence of it.
Yeah. Well, so I wonder then, the people who listen to this show cover a broad spectrum of business expertise, all the way up to highly established, business people, all the way down to I'm in college and I'm thinking about starting a business. Mm-hmm. If somebody's just beginning their professional journey and they don't feel like they really have that much to give, I think a lot of people might go immediately to finances or, other things like this, giving. But I think for a lot of folks, they have trouble even recognizing value in what they do. And so how do you help people sort of bridge that gap to understand that they have sort of an inherent worth and maybe, I guess, identify how to apply that worth so that we're putting it somewhere useful?
Yeah. So, I think we all have two different types of value in a sense. We do have inherent value in what I call intrinsic value. That simply means just by being here, by being alive, whatever, you bring value to the table, that's fine. But we also have what I call market value. And I define market value as that combination of strengths, traits, talents, and characteristics that allow a person to add value to others, to the marketplace, in such a way in which they'll be rewarded financially or otherwise. Now, obviously, the younger you are, the less market value you bring to the table, but that doesn't mean you don't have any market value. It could be that you have a certain skill set regarding technology that you're able to help someone with who is older, maybe wiser, but doesn't have that kind of knowledge. You may be great at making connections with people. You might be wonderful at being able to empathetically listen to someone. You may be a wonderful connector of people. There's all sorts of ways. I don't think we have to I don't think we have to pressure ourselves when we're real young to necessarily bring those to the table right away. But I think what's very important is we begin learning those skills. We learn how to be of value to others. And the best way to do that is by asking people questions and then listening, right?
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think for a lot of people, and maybe this is the next topic we can kind of get into, which is this notion of finding purpose and understanding and being authentic, I guess, to ourselves. So as we try and understand who we are, I think that people of my generation, maybe you can speak to your own generation, you're a little bit older than I am, but maybe there seems like there was this push where for people of my age, I'm 45, and it seems like there was sort of this push where to be an entrepreneur meant to hustle 18 hours a day, 20 hours a day, kill yourself for the business, go, do all these things. And it was really, I mean, I think it was under the guise of sort of self-importance, right? The idea is that I can work so much, I can just generate whatever I want. I don't have to do anything for anyone else. It's just go claw in whatever I can get. And over time, I think that's led to maybe a generation of people who take authenticity to mean the version of me that I put out there for people to see, rather than the version of the human they actually are. So instead of being what I guess we would consider sort of textbook authentic, they're putting out a vibe of authenticity. I think this is being exacerbated, in the world of social media and things like that, where we spend a lot of time idolizing people based on this little snapshot of their lives that we get. And, we find ourselves feeling not good enough, or maybe we want to emulate their behavior in some way or another, not even understanding the context of how they're doing what they're doing. And I think that that's leading to, I guess, a lot of false authenticity. So you're seeing a lot of people coming out there and promoting authenticity, and that this is something that we really need to have and be authentic. And I think that this relates to the value that we bring. But how do we, I guess, discover who we actually are?
Well, so I see authenticity as in many ways, as you just mentioned, being hijacked in a sense, the meaning of authenticity. Another in the ones you mentioned certainly hold true. Authenticity has also come to mean, in a sense, no boundaries, right? You see people just saying and doing whatever they want, whatever comes to mind, being insulting or using, whatever it is they do because, well, it's authentic. And so, it's real. It's when so much of it seems almost forced, to look authentic. But I personally define authenticity as acting congruently with your values. Okay, nothing more, nothing less. So the question we have to ask then is, what are your values? And it's not what are the values society says you should have. And it's not the values that, other people have said you should have, people who love you or people who are, close to you. It's not the values you think you should have, but really don't. It's what are your values? What do you hold as those highest values? And this takes study, by the way. It's not something you just come up with. It's something that and fortunately, there are some people, and you can do some an internet search for this, and you'll find some wonderful people who do this. But there's a lot of teachings out there about identifying your values. Many of them are very, very good. And so that's something to start with. And then I think you just kind of do a test. Is what I'm about to say or do or post or whatever it is that congruent with my values? Is that really how I want to be? I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense too, because I think that there's something that happens to entrepreneurs. I know it's happened to me to some degree. Luckily, I feel like I've been able to course correct over the years, but there's this notion where everybody says that you should chase your passion, chase your dreams, the things that you're doing, you should pursue, or the interests that you have, you should pursue. But I think what ends up happening to a lot of people is we end up pursuing other people's hopes and dreams because we see it on Instagram, or we see it wherever, on TV, movies, whatever. And so we actually end up chasing down other people's fantasy. And then I think that that's in large part why a lot of people, when they achieve success or whatever, they actually aren't that happy. And it's because they spent their whole life chasing somebody else's thing. They weren't actually being authentic.
Yeah, that's the most dangerous thing, isn't it? When you think about it, it's one of the biggest wastes of a life. And I mean, I think more and more as people are aware of it, that is happening and is going to happen less and less. I think that was something that how many people went to high school, went to college, studied maybe what their parents wanted them to study or what was expected of them to study, and they had a 25-year career where outwardly it looked right, and they just weren't happy. They were desperately unhappy, and what a horrible way to live. And then there's also the school of thought, and that I know where they're coming from, yet I don't agree with it, that says, well, forget about your passion, just do the work and your passion will develop. Yeah, but that's really difficult. If you look at any really sustainably successful person, and when I say success, yeah, financially, but also in the other ways, whether it's mentally, emotionally, relationally, and all the other ways that success can be measured, including financial, which is also very important. If you look at those people who are sustainably successful, most of them did something they were passionate about.
Yeah.
They did something that really brought them joy. And it didn't have to be curing cancer. It didn't have to be something that we look at as, it could be anything that person felt as though they were meant to do. And they took joy in doing, and they went to work, and it was bigger than themselves. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think, it's a lot easier to be successful doing something that you're passionate about.
Yeah. Well, and I think maybe what we're tiptoeing around here, or to sort of connect the dots, is the authenticity is acting in a manner congruent with your values, but your passion is also congruent with your values. It's doing a thing that, it's not about, or the reason we have passion about things, I guess, is because it's totally in line with your values. Right? Whatever it is you're pursuing is the thing that you care about intrinsically. It's not about, whatever you see outwardly, maybe.
I agree with you. And when people ask me about this, and they talk about doing what they love and following their passion, I also let them know, there's a third part to it. So it's doing what you love, your passion, what you're good at. And a lot of times the way we're created, what we love is typically what we're good at, what we have an inclination to. But even if we're not naturally gifted at what we're passionate about, if we're passionate about it, we can usually learn it. Okay, so we take the first two, doing what you love and what you're good at, and then you have to also find a marketplace for it. People who will pay you for expressing your passion, right? Whether it's selling this or that, creating this or that, producing this or that, whatever it happens to be. Now that marketplace might already exist, and you're simply filling a need within that marketplace, or it might be something you need to create. I don't know, and it might be something that you don't know if you can create and will be created, but you're so passionate about what you're doing and so committed to it that those are the people who often change things. And it doesn't always work out that way. What I'm saying is that it's not a matter of just having the thought or I really just, it's also being practical and understanding that it's very reasonable. It's very rational to follow your passion, develop the skills, and understand that there needs to be a marketplace for you to provide that value to.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, you hear these things like, it takes 10,000 hours or whatever to get really good at something, that kind of thing. It's like the only things you have the patience to put 10,000 hours into are the things that you actually care about, or they align up with your values or whatever. And that's how you develop that. I mean, like I was an artist as a child. I drew every day. I drew through every class period. I drew for everything my whole life. And then now I draw, but it's like, but it was a thing that was, and I don't know if you would call being artistic or drawing as a value necessarily, it's not a value in like the moral sense, but nonetheless, it's something that I do put, something of importance in my own life, right?
Here's the thing. Value can be defined as the relative worth or desirability of a thing to the end user or beholder. Mm-hmm. So that is something you found to be of value.
Yeah.
So that's
and I think
high value to you. It's not a moral value, as you said, but it's still a high value to you.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a great point too, because I think especially in sort of the entrepreneurial rat race, there's this feeling that basically everything must turn into money one day. And I think you're allowed to have things like that. So in this case, I mean, I did turn drawing into building a creative agency and working as a creative director in a lot of places. I mean, it did turn into a carear for me. But for a lot of people, you're allowed to just like a thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be any more than that.
Yeah.
So, all right, I want to start or maybe transition a little bit, because I think, we were talking a little bit about sort of influence in social media, things like that. One thing I know that's really important to you, it comes up on this show a lot, is this notion of mentorship. And I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about just sort of, mentorship as you see it and what's important about it, and then how to best maybe go about finding mentors in your life.
Yeah, mentorship was a big part of a theme sort of that went through John David Mann's in my book, The Go-Giver. Pindar was the main mentor, and there were others and so forth. And Joe was the protege who was in a position where he needed to, to tap into some mentorship that could help shift his focus, really. And, I was very fortunate in finding, I didn't have that one, John David Mann, my co-author, and I both had great life mentors in our parents. Okay, so we both consider ourselves very lucky, very fortunate, very blessed to have had really great parents who set fantastic examples. Now, in the business world, we both, and this is when we, compared notes when writing the book, is we were both very fortunate that while neither of us had that, one mentor for years and years and years, we always had mentors along the way that were there to guide us in certain areas. But we both also approached mentor or followership, if you will, or protégeship, because there's mentor and protege, right? We both tried to be good proteges by honoring our mentors, and not only by following their suggestions, but respecting their time and trying to be of value to them in whatever way we could. But when it comes to finding a mentor, I think what a lot of people do, and I don't know that this is necessarily just a today thing. I think people did this years ago, although now with social media, it's so much easier to connect with people you may never have had the opportunity to even reach out to and connect with, that people will approach a very busy person, whether it's online, whether it's in person, whether it's by phone, whatever, and they'll just say, "Hey, would you mentor me?" And when we do that, I think that's sort of counterproductive for a few reasons. One is, if you want this person to mentor you, the chances are they are being asked by lots of people to mentor them, and they don't have that kind of time to be able to just mentor as much as maybe they would like to. Who has the time to do that? So you've got to in some way distinguish yourself and make yourself attractive to them, or we could say of value to them, so that they want to do this. So rather than just saying, "Would you mentor me?" which can come off as maybe entitled or what have you, if instead you would approach that person by saying something like, "I understand you're very busy, so if this is not something you have the time to do, or for whatever reason would rather not, I'll absolutely understand. I'm wondering if I might be able to ask you one or two very specific questions." Now, when doing this, you framed it totally differently. First, you approach this with reverence and respect, not in an entitled way like they owe you any advice, right? But you've said, "I understand you are very busy, may not have the time or the the desire to want to do. Absolutely understand. This is what we call the out or the back door. It's an emotional escape route or escape hatch, so that the person doesn't feel pressured. People are such that the more they feel pressured to do something, the more they resist it. But to the degree we give someone that out or back door, that's the degree they don't feel the need to take it, because they feel very comfortable with you. They know you're going to respect their time. Now, what you also did is you let them know that this is not something just general where I'm going to waste your time with a bunch of fluff, but, may I ask you one or two very specific questions? This says to the person, all right, here's a person, here's a young person who they know what they're looking to accomplish through this conversation. basically, they're not going to waste my time. They have an agenda. In this case, agenda having a positive implication. All right. And so that's really the key. Now, they will probably say, sure, go ahead. What can I do for you? Or they'll set up a time. Now, again, not everyone, and not everyone has to. And they don't have to if they don't want to, but most people will, actually. And so now what you want to do is you want to make sure that you study them, research them enough that you don't ask anything that could have been, that you could have found the answer to just through your research. Again, you don't want to waste their time and have them feel as though you're, and then when you're speaking with them, and again, it could be in person, could be phone, could be on Zoom or whatever, you want to make sure to, ask those questions. Don't take up a lot of their time. And when they've answered, you want to make sure to, thank them, profusely. Thank you so much for your time. I will apply this right away. And may I ever so often, keep in touch, just let you know how things are. And they're going to say, oh yeah, of course, please do. Now, my suggestion would be that the moment this conversation is over, you write, not email and not text, but you write a handwritten, personalized note of thanks. Just a short one that just, dear Mr. So-and-so, dear Ms. So-and-so, or first names, however it's been established. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with me. Your counsel is priceless. I will apply your wisdom immediately, and will let you know how things are, turning out or coming about, and so forth. And then, best regards, sign your name, handwrite the envelope, hand stamp it, not a meter stamp, hand stamp, a regular stamp, send it out. And that's going to make a huge difference. That's something, again, it distinguishes you from everyone else. One other thought is, find out their favorite charitable cause. Again, you should probably be able to do this online, but if not, you can always ask their administrative assistant, and make a small, it doesn't have to be anything big or extravagant, make a small donation to their favorite charity in their name. It'll get back to them. And you're not doing it to kiss up or anything, but so again, they know that you're looking to some way, somehow bring value to their life. You're honoring something. You took the time to find out what's important, to what they value, right? And to make a small donation. Okay, now what you might do a few weeks later, a month later, you get back with them, let them know how things are going. Maybe you have another question to ask and see if they can get on the phone with you or in person or what have you. Now, if an ongoing mentor-protege relationship is supposed to develop, it will. If not, it won't. It doesn't have to. This might be your only conversation with this person, or you might have a few and they introduce you to someone else, or just a few and they don't, and you move on to someone else and you do the same. And what will happen is, and it's important not to be attached to the result, right? Do these things. You're going to meet people along the way, and you're going to meet some great people, some really helpful mentors. Be open to that, but again, without attachment to any one person having to be that one mentor who's going to,
Sure.
You do that, and you've really created the benevolent context, as we say, for your success.
Well, what I love about your description there is you touched on basically each of the laws that we talk about in the book, but we'll also, we're talking about the value you bring versus and what you can ask, in doing your research and asking for a question. You're talking about influence. This is a person that you think is influential to you and you want to try and gain something from. You're being authentic. You're doing all the things. I mean, basically, you described creating a human relationship with this person. And you walk in through baby steps. It's the same way you would build a relationship with anybody, a future spouse, a business prospect, or whatever. This is what you would do. You would start with little questions. You would start nice. You wouldn't be overbearing and, hey, give me this or tell me that, or, I want to be your, will you mentor me, to use your example, and I'm sure you see a lot of these. So I trust your insights. So thank you for
taking down, and to something you brought up before, it comes down to all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to, or mentor, or, what have you, those people they know, like, and trust. And what you're doing is you're creating that know, like, and trust relationship.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the things I want to talk about, we've got a few more minutes with you here, is I wanted to talk about, so we come up or have come across this a lot on this podcast. We've been podcasting for 8 years. We talk to a lot of business leaders. We run into this a lot. And what it is this notion of basically taking the things that we read or we learn. So in your case, somebody might read The Go Giver, but then actually applying that in their business. And so a lot of people, I think, spend time reading, I think reaching out to mentors, doing all these things as sort of a shortcut. Like, hey, instead of actually doing the work, I'm going to reach out to Bob and say, hey, Bob, will you mentor me? Let him answer my questions. And now I feel like I've done something, even though I haven't actually done anything. And so I think there's a lot of folks that do these sort of things. And like for folks like me, for example, I create value. I build things that look like businesses. I have great ideas that do things. I'll push them all the way to a certain level. And then I hit this invisible barrier that seems to be like just where I stop across a million different ventures, across a million different ideas. This is whatever happens, I hit this invisible barrier and I just can't break through it. In our conversations on this show, we've sort of defined this as maybe being fear. It's sort of a fear of a next step. So you work up to the spot where you're comfortable and then you hit this barricade, and, breaking through that seems to be the challenge for people. So for folks like me, I start reading and I start doing all that stuff, but then it's like no amount of knowledge is enough for me to get through the wall. And so I wonder if you've experienced that in your own career as an entrepreneur, as an author, or have encountered that with people that you're dealing with, which is how do you get to the next step? And I think mentorship is one possibility, but what are ways that people can maybe break through this wall or conquer this fear if they don't have someone to necessarily hold their hand and take them to the next level?
Yeah, this is a very human thing because, and I first learned about this concept, and forgive me, I'm not trying to turn my back on you, but I'm reaching for a book. I first read this book in 1983, I think. Maybe it was it was published in 1960, called Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. This was really the first book I ever read, and this is a breakthrough book, and many people credit him for this. It was the first book in which I really understood that our unconscious belief system, right, how our subjective truths about the world, how it works, and about us drive our performance and can limit our performance. And, one of the things I learned from this book is we can never attain more than our most limiting belief. And so when it gets to a point, and we've all been there, where, we find ourselves in a pattern of getting to a certain place and not being able to get, that is the set point, if you will, that says, yeah, this is who I am. This is my level of success. And I don't go further. So in order to get past that, we've got to understand, first, we've got to be aware that this is a thing. We can never, cure a problem that we're not aware exists. And this is where there are so many people, such as Randy Gage and David Nagel, Sharon Lecter and Lisa Peterson, a friend of mine, Ellen Rogan, and Ken Honda and the late Bob Proctor. When they write about prosperity mindset, 99.9% of what they write is about how to get past those mental blocks, right? Those unconscious blocks that keep us from going to that next level. So yeah, mentorship is great. Reading is great. Applying there. But if we believe that this is our highest point that we can get, John Maxwell in his leadership teaching, calls it the law of the lid, right? There's that certain point you can get to, and that's it. Now, in this case, though, it's an emotional lid because it's a lid that we have placed upon ourselves, again, unconsciously, and that's the most insidious part, right? That we don't even know that we've done that. And that's why I think it's so important to make a study of prosperity, because, once we know that, then we can, and once we know what's holding us back, we can have those breakthroughs. But I think Psycho-Cybernetics is a great book to start with. There's I was hoping I was going to be able to find it right away, but David Nagel has a great book, I think it's The Millions Within, if I'm correct, but where he goes through his own growth in terms of that, because he was at that same kind of set point, and he was able to then get past it. But I think that's so very important to understand. It's a mental and emotional thing more than a matter of not having the ability to be able to do it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's funny because even just in my own experience, because I feel like I hit this wall a lot. I have no shortage of ideas and plenty of things that I push all the way through to we've launched the website, but it never goes further than that, or I never find the audience for it or whatever. And in the spirit of giving, I do a lot of these things because I think they're a good idea and I think humanity should have it. But I'm not doing the focus groups up front. I'm not doing all the things that like a traditional entrepreneur might do. And so, so I keep running into these brick walls. And so, but, as I say, we've encountered this a lot with a lot of people and have made it our personal mission to try and conquer that or knock the lid off it, so to speak.
I'll tell you can I suggest one other book?
Sure.
I've really been studying this book for the last year and a half or so. It's the third book in Michael Singer's series, Michael A. Singer. His most famous book is called The Untethered Soul, which is a wonderful book. He also had The Surrender Experiment, which is about not being attached to outcomes, and wonderful. But his third book, it's called Living Untethered. It's the third book in his series, Living Untethered. This is, to me, the most important personal development or personal improvement book I've ever read in my life. And I've been studying this stuff for a really long time. And it really shows us who we're dealing with on the inside. It gives us such an understanding of ourselves. I found it to be so very, very helpful. So if you get a chance to pick that up, Living Untethered, the third book in his series, I just thought that was a magnificent book.
Oh, that's a great bit of advice. Thanks so much, Bob. And we've kept you a little bit long, so let me cut you off. But thanks so much for taking the time to meet with me, Bob. I really appreciate you. These have been awesome insights. And obviously, I could go on for hours and hours and days. But thanks for all you do. Thanks for the book. And thanks for everything you continue to do.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. We'll see you guys next time.